Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me either live or recorded for tonight's live session. The primary focus is going to be on game creation because you have an assignment due that involves creating a game very soon, and there's been some questions about that. So I'm hoping that by this point in the semester, you have some ideas for your questions, probably written out in a Word document, and you're ready to sort of take the step to the final formatting and putting some technology in it. I am using Slido tonight. It is voluntary if you want to use it, but if you do, just go to sli.do. I'll put the link in the chat. This is primarily for people that are here live. Unfortunately, it's not going to work so much for the asynchronous folks. And you can enter the code that's on your screen, E820. There's only a few Slido questions, and I will be monitoring the chat if there's questions in the chat as well. So first, let's talk about what gamification is. Gamification is essentially applying game-based principles to non-game learning environments to try and make learning more fun. I've got some examples on the screen here of some things that you may have seen that have been used for gamification in a variety of contexts. We're talking about everything from your Fitbit, if you have one, to other watches. I don't know if you guys have something like that, maybe on your phone, where you take a certain number of steps and you get a badge that sort of rewards you for your activity that you've done. It's the same sort of idea. I don't really expect a lot of your games to have levels, badges, or leaderboards, although I have seen some students in the past use some asynchronous technology games that have some of those elements built in. If you've been using Peerwise, you would notice that they have badges and leaderboards, that kind of thing built in. Those are all gamification elements that are designed to try and encourage students to engage more deeply in learning. The end goal of creating a game for your peers is to make learning the course content, so for transcultural nursing, more engaging and more fun. So your game might not actually have the badges or the leaderboards, but I am hoping that your game ends up being a fun way for your peers to review for the final exam, because that is really the purpose of it. Please stop me at any point if you guys have any questions. Tonight, I'm going to go over a few examples of some things that students have done in the past, and I've tried to organize it from low tech to more tech. I even had a more techy option that I decided to take out of the slides for tonight because it was even too much tech for me. So we're going to start with some ideas of some games that you could create right in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, any word processing program. Then I'm going to go to slides, which I think will probably be popular. So I'm talking about like Google Slides or PowerPoint. You can do the same thing in both. Then I'm going to talk about H5P, which is something that I really like that students have used in the past. I find it user-friendly and it's completely free. And then we can talk about some of the cautions with using other platforms to create your game, which you are welcome to do. So if you're in Slido, I'm curious to get started. What kind of game would you like to create? If you input your answer into Slido, what's going to happen is it's going to show on the screen, and people that are viewing asynchronously will also be able to follow along. If you're not into Slido right now, then feel free to put it in the chat. So I see someone saying a crossword. We'll talk about the crossword very shortly. That's one of the first things. Multi-level puzzle. Ooh, that sounds interesting. Last night I was looking at some ideas for an escape room, and I was like, how can we make an online version of an escape room? And that's kind of what the multi-level puzzle reminds me of. Thinking about doing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire nursing style, that's a great idea. There's lots of templates out there for that, I think. Waiting to see if anybody else has some ideas. We do not have a huge audience tonight, so I'm not going to wait too much longer. And then I'll go over these ideas as well as some others. Okay. So when you're looking at your game, the majority of your grades are actually geared towards the content of your game. So my big caution to you at the beginning is not to overemphasize the technical bits, the mechanics of the game, to actually make sure that your content is really good first. Now, it is a good idea to try and decide how you're going to format your game first, because if you're doing it inside of a Kahoot or some online tool like that, then it does sometimes limit the characters that you can use. So it's a good idea to check that out before you plan your whole game to be designed around that. For your questions, it's super important that they're clearly worded, that they're relevant, so they have to be tied to the module that you've been assigned. In terms of creativity, if you take a look at the rubric, which I only screen captured the top end of the rubric on the side there, but at the end of the presentation, you have a screenshot of the entire rubric. Under creativity, it's talking about testing a variety of concepts. I think it's going to take some creativity to capture a wide variety of concepts at different skill levels throughout your game, particularly if you're using something like someone mentioned earlier, a crossword. So I don't want to see your entire game, and I'm sure Ramesh doesn't either, all about terminology. Maybe it's okay to have a few terminology questions, but in this course, we are trying to emphasize application of content. It's important that somewhere in your game you explain your rationale for your correct and incorrect responses. Now, depending on how you formatted your game, it might be able to show up right after the question, which is ideal, or you might be able to put it in a supplementary document that students have access to afterwards. I kind of already touched on the idea that there's a range of difficulty. Better games would have more difficult questions in them than games that are not as good. Now, when this rubric was initially created, it was a group project. It's not this time, so you could ignore the group component of the quantity thing. You're all individuals, so 10 or more questions should be part of your game. And then, of course, you don't want to have mistakes in it. You don't want to have formatting mistakes. You don't want to have spelling mistakes. You don't want to have content errors, that kind of thing. Let's talk about some ideas for things that you can do directly in Microsoft Word. Now, a crossword is probably easier not to do in Microsoft Word, but you could do it in Microsoft Word. I saw some videos online showing you how to use Excel to create the little boxes, and then you can copy and paste that into Word, and then you can write your across clues and your down clues right underneath that. If you just do a quiz, it's not going to be as creative. It's probably not going to be as fun, so you won't necessarily get all of the marks maybe under creativity or something, but you would have your content. So I would, if you're strapped for time, I would start with the quiz questions first. But I think I would like to see more developed games so that your peers actually have fun using them. My crossword caution is that I've had a difficult time when students have handed in crosswords. It's hard to get away from that terminology to the application piece when you're doing a crossword. So it's fine, and I've actually seen it done before. Just be very, very cautious to get away from just terminology-based things. Another idea might be a hangman. I've actually never seen someone do that, but if you're thinking about a classic game where somebody guesses a letter, somebody in the past has done a decoding game inside Word where they had basically a quiz with multiple choice questions, but then instead of the options being A, B, C, D, they used different letters, and then the letter corresponded to what went in the bottom in the code. So, but if this person got all the quiz questions right, it would give them a sentence at the end. And that's a way to take a quiz or the hangman idea, incorporate higher level questions, and make it so that it's not just a plain quiz. I kind of really like that idea. There's a link here, edhelper.com. Oops, it's not letting me open the link. Okay, that's fun. If you go to edhelper.com, that's what the one student who did a really nice job on the crossword had used to create their crossword. So why don't I just open a tab? I'll go to edhelper.com. It looks kind of like this. There's a whole bunch of different games in here, but if you search for crossword, there's some tools here to generate your own puzzle, and then you can download it or you can take a screenshot of it and put it into Word. I do want to be able to use Microsoft Word to look at your questions and your answers, because then I can use the search function. So just don't give me just a picture of it. Or Ramesh, poor Ramesh, he doesn't want just a picture either. Actually give us like something that we can see all of the content in. Okay. I feel like I just rambled a bit. Are there any questions so far? Particularly about games that you might be creating in Microsoft Word or gamification in general. Not yet, thank you. I see there's a couple people typing. The content is based on the chapters from the book. We're using the book this term, so yes, I'd like the majority of your content to be based on content from the book. However, I do also encourage you bringing in other resources. So there's some other assigned readings in the course. Those would be great to use. Because you're preparing your peers for testing, it's a good idea to use course content resources first. However, as long as the other resources that you're bringing in make sense, that's okay.
Laura, there's a question.
Oh, yeah?
In the chat room.
I think I just answered that one.
Oh, okay, okay. The content is based on the chapters from the book? Okay. Sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know how you did it, Ramesh. In my class, I've assigned people modules, not chapters.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Did you assign it to each one?
Yeah, I assigned people. I mean, do it however you did it, but I assigned individuals different like modules.
But there may be 2 students doing one module, isn't it?
Yeah, there would have to be because we have more students than we have modules.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
But that's okay because then we just have more than one game option.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so Laura, the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I've seen that done in PowerPoint before. If you got the answer wrong, it allowed you to continue. Is that okay? Yes, that's fine. I mean, we want our peers to be able to go through the entire game. I see another question coming in. I am thinking to do a word search and will do my best to use application-based questions in this format. Is that okay? Yes, that's perfectly fine as long as you have some higher level difficulty, some application-based content in there. I just sometimes have a hard time when I'm creating questions with like only one word answers that could only be that answer when it's really open-ended like a crossword or a word search. So if you're able to do it, then great, go ahead. That's just my only word of caution for that. I'll talk about some slides. So inside slides, these are a couple of the popular ones. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is another one out there. If you just do a quick Google search, or even if you look below the slides for tonight, there's some links to some different templates that you can use. I did want to show you one that a student had done in the past. I have her permission to share. So this is done right inside Google Slides, which I thought was really neat. I also like that it's clean and it's easy to read. So a lot of the Jeopardy templates out there are very flashy. It's okay to have like the Jeopardy sounds and stuff if you want to have that, but I would caution against having too many moving graphics because sometimes when you go to send that to your teacher or something, there's formatting issues and it's not as nice. This one happens to be related to Module 7, which is convenient since today is like, or since this week is Module 7 content. All that she did, and I don't know if she used a template or if she built this herself, was she had a slide at the beginning, which then linked to other slides. So when you're putting links in a slide deck, if you go to link here, you can paste a link or you can go slides in this presentation and pick a slide. And so if you pick slide 3, then that's going to link you to slide 3. I'm just going to undo that because we don't want that there. So basically what happens here is if a student goes into this and clicks present, they can pick a dollar value. It takes them to a question. They read the question. They think of what they think the answer is. They then click for the answer. And then it provides them the answer with the rationale. I kind of like that the rationale is right beside it. And then this link here that says back to the board is another hyperlink that just hyperlinks back to this same slide. a lot of the Jeopardy templates, whether they're in PowerPoint or whether they are in Google Slides, works exactly like that. So you guys can feel free to try this out and see what you think of it. That is an option for if you want to do something like Jeopardy. Again, there's so many different options out there. Another one, so are you smarter than a nursing student? This is supposed to be like, are you smarter than a, what is it, something-year-old? I don't know, I've never actually seen the game. A fifth grader? Okay, so these students did the same sort of idea. They found a template online, and then they left the instructions in there for students, and then if you have to download this one for it to work properly because it was created in PowerPoint, but you can go through and you can see how it does kind of the same thing. So you go to different questions, and then it gives you dollar values, and then it gives you the rationale, and then when you click this return button, it actually brings you back to this list. Now, I could see that since you guys are working as individuals, you might not have as large of a game, so you might not want to have as many things. But but this Jeopardy one is close to 10, so it's not too bad to just have a couple of extra questions to round out your Jeopardy there. I thought that those are two neat ideas that I've seen in the past. Also, when I was doing a search for this kind of stuff, I saw Wheel of Fortune, so that's another idea where in order for an individual to get a letter, if you're using a template for that, maybe they have to answer a question first. So for some of these games, you're going to have to modify how the games work in order for them to work with the content-based questions that you have, as opposed to just guessing like a letter. I can see a lot of you probably using templates like this. Do you have any, well, actually, I have a tip for you. Before you go and you try and put hours and hours into a template, I would suggest that you download the template and practice with it a little bit first, just to make sure that it's going to work for you. Also, take a look and make sure that the template has good contrast. So it's a lot of work if you're going to change the template, all of the colors to be different than what's in there, and if you're going to remove all the graphics and things. So just make sure that it's not too overwhelming before you get into it. Those are my two big tips for working with templates. I don't see any questions. Okay. Again, there's some links below the slides to some different templates. I am going to show you something called H5P. Now, H5P is a higher tech level. It is user-friendly, I find, and it can be used alone, or it can be used with a website. So first, I'll start by showing you a couple of the examples that students have made in the past. So at one point, I thought that you had to have a website in order to create H5P elements and share them with people, but that's actually wrong. That's why this one's on my domain, is because the student built it on one of my websites. If you click on this link, it takes you to a game that they had made around pain management. And basically, a student comes, they click on questions. Now, I haven't read this, so I'm probably checking the right thing or the wrong thing. They click on check, and then it gives them the information for why the answer they selected was either incorrect or correct. You could show the solution if you want to. That doesn't look like it worked very well. Or you can retry the question, and then it'll give you the answers for the next one. And then you can go to the next question. You can select other ones. Hey, we got 2 out of 3. We can retry the question if we want. The thing that makes this kind of nice is because when you click on things, it tells you what you get, and then if you get it completely right, you get a little star, which is kind of neat, kind of interactive. And you can practice these things as many times as you want, and they're not worth grades because it's games that your peers made. When you looked into this, you had a hard time creating an account. So I'm going to ask you if you were on h5p.org or h5p.com, because it's very important that you go to h5p.org, and I'll tell you why. h5p.org is free, it's open, anybody can use it. h5p.com is for integration with learning management systems such as Blackboard, and it's for institutions to pay for, and it requires that you have a paid account. I'm currently logged in, so I don't I don't know, maybe it gave you like a prompt to think about paying for h5p.com, but you don't have to pay for h5p.com. You can create an h5p.org account. And I've had students do it in the past, so I don't know. I'm guessing that maybe you were on .com instead of .org. I'll wait and see if she's got something else to add to that while I show you this other website. Now, this is for a different course, but a student doing a gamification type of assignment here as well created a website, and then it's just a one-page website. Inside, now this was an informatics class, so that's probably part of the reason why they decided to choose a website. They have their learning objectives here, which they had to have, as well as an introduction, which they had to have. Now, unfortunately, this piece broke, but what they had done is they had embedded several different H5P elements so that you can click and drag things, and you can check your answers, and then you have true and false questions down here. Obviously, I'm doing very badly because I'm not reading the questions right now, but okay, this is making me look bad. Let's go false. There we go. See how I got a star there? And then you can scroll down, and then there's another set of questions. So if you don't want to do just one H5P element, you can embed multiple H5P elements on a single web page, which you can also create for free. And that can be a little bit more interactive. It wouldn't let me choose Canada as a country. It was asking for HTML, I think. It may have been .com. I just went to .org. That might have been the issue. Thanks. Okay, if you have an issue with H5P, feel free to reach out to me. I've worked a lot in H5P. Not all of it is in my H5P account right here. Some of it is. This is an interesting one. So once you create a content in h5p.org, a piece of content here, you can share this link here with me to mark it if all of your thing is in one H5P element, or you can use the embed link down here to embed it in another website. Now, this isn't related to transcultural nursing, but this is an activity with flashcards that you can identify if things are realism or relativism. So if you go like this, and then you click check, it'll tell you if you're right or you're wrong. You can go to the next flashcard, you can skip along, and oops, that image isn't working. That makes me look bad too. I haven't used this one in a while. Anyways, I must have a more recent version on my other website because I'm sure it was finished. But that is just an example of another type of activity that you can use. With all of the activities, you have the link up here to share. Once you're inside of h5p.org, if you want to create new content, you just go up here, and then it'll bring up something that looks like this. Again, if you guys need more instructions, I can give them to you after. But you pick the type of content that you want. There's all kinds of different types of content. So before you decide what type of content you want, I would go to this link in the slides. That's the content types, and maybe just browse the kinds of types that they have. I do think that the most popular ones are probably going to be the question ones for you guys. So most likely either like maybe fill in the blank, but probably the question sets, the multiple choice question sets are good. That's where you get one question, then you go to the next question, you get another question. Some of these I haven't played with, but I can help you figure out most of them. Let's just take a look at the multiple choice questions here for a second. So if I click on that, then this title doesn't really matter. Sure, we'll put in CFAM assessment. And then we'll say identify the components of a CFAM assessment. You guys might remember this. So if I put structure in, and that's one of the components, then I click correct, and let's go external context is another thing. What's something that CFAM doesn't assess? Let's add an option. And let's say CFAM is so comprehensive. I just looked outside and my deck is outside, so I'm just going to put use of the deck here for now. Oops, I typed that wrong. So that one's obviously incorrect. Now, what I would want to do if I was submitting this for marks is I would want to add some rationale in here. So I would go in the overall feedback area and write some rationale, or I could go tips and feedback. If you put a tip text in there, it'll show up on the question before people have answered it. But if you go underneath and you go to show the message if the answer is selected, then it'll only show it after they've submitted a response. And then you can also do the same thing for if it's not selected. Sometimes I'll put the same information in both of those. All I have to do is hit save and my question is done. So that was pretty easy. I can add more questions if I want, but see, look, I got that use of the deck wrong. So I got 0 out of 2. That's just a very quick overview. Again, so things like this that involve technology, you might need to do a little bit of self-directed learning to figure it out, but if you're having an issue with the H5P, you can reach out to me. I feel like I covered everything on that slide. And I want to just check in to see how you guys are doing. If you are in Slido, can you please tell me what is most important in your game? Aesthetics, content, creativity, or function? I got 5 answers. Okay, yes. Most of you said content. Actually, everybody that answered said content. That is correct. So both for your peers learning and for yourself, for your grade in the course, content is the most important. So my caution to you is, if you are not a techie person, please do not get too caught up on using something really techie. This is a transcultural nursing class, not an informatics class, so I'm not forcing you to use any technology. I would like to see something that looks nice and something that isn't just a straight quiz, but you can do something, as we covered already, right inside Microsoft Word or right inside Slides that's pretty easy. You don't have to go with something super flashy, like H5P is a little bit flashy. After that, so after you've got your content down and your plan down, then the other things are important as well. So if you try and go too techie and you create a game that doesn't function for anybody, your peers aren't going to want to use it. It's not going to help them learn anything. So that's not very useful. And so it's kind of like the other things are sort of like bonuses. If you go on Google, there are endless possibilities for types of games that you can create. Like I said, I think already last night I went down a bit of a rabbit hole trying to make an app for you guys out of multiple choice questions using something called Glido. I was told it would be easy. It was not as easy as I thought, and I gave up after a few hours. I would recommend that if you have a hard time figuring out the technology, that you not spend too much time trying to figure out the technology, that you go back to one of the maybe easier options that we've covered sort of tonight. I do think that you should be able to do any of the options that we talked about tonight. There are also lots of other options out there that you could use. I would, again, caution you to pay attention to which options are going to make you pay for something. There's something out there called Nearpod, which a student used in the past, and they made a beautiful presentation that was interactive. It had different types of questions in it and stuff, but then as soon as the Nearpod license expired, you couldn't access it anymore. So the student was all nervous that I wasn't going to get to market before the thing expired, but I had 30 days and I did get to market. The unfortunate part is that that game was then not allowed to, or not able to be shared in future iterations of the course because it was done inside of Nearpod. I've only shared a few versions of the games in the future, but when students come up with really good games, sometimes it's nice to share those. Also, things like Kahoot and other things will limit the number of characters. So either you want to be aware of that in advance and you want to pick your tool that you're using in advance to plan for that, or you want to pick something that doesn't have those types of limitations. That was you. Was that you, Pod? Okay, you might not want to use Nearpod again. It was beautiful, but couldn't be used in the future. Okay, so she'll support me on that. Okay. When you are submitting your assignment, so for the purposes of grading, it's, I feel, important for myself and Ramesh to get a copy of your questions before you put them into whatever technology you put them into, just in case there's any technical difficulties. It also might make our marking a little bit easier. Now, of course, if your questions are already in Microsoft Word, it isn't such a big deal, but if you're putting your questions into something like H5P, I type them out in a Word document when I'm making H5P things, because H5P doesn't have spell check unless you have something installed on your computer that'll do it outside of H5P, and I like to keep a copy separate just in case. Also, so I need a link to your game or the game file. So again, if it's Microsoft Word or if it's PowerPoint, then you're going to upload the file. If it's Google Slides or well, Google Doc, I'd want you to download and give me a copy of it. But if it's something online, like I can't imagine anybody doing a game in Prezi, but if you did, then you'd have to give me a link. Any of those other technical things like H5P, you're going to have to give us a link so that we can see how the game works. Yeah, so either a link to the game or the game file. And if you've gotten any feedback from your peers or anything else that you want to give us to consider when we're grading, like let's say you posted it for your peers in the discussion board and your peers were like, oh, this was amazing. It really helped me study for the exam because you really targeted those things that are in the, what's it called? Exam outline. I think that's what we called it. The list where we have all the terms and the outcomes for the course, then that might be worth submitting as supporting documentation with your assignment. I see that somebody is typing. So if we do use H5P, we need to send you the link to the game and a Word document with questions, and that's it. Am I understanding correct? A link to the game and the Word document, that's correct. And if you want to submit supporting any other supporting documentation, then you can. Yes, your references in a Word document would probably be with the questions inside Word. So the first check mark there, a copy of the questions inside Word, I guess I didn't even think to specify that that's where your rationales and your references all would be. If you're doing something like H5P, there's lots of room to put your rationales. There isn't a very good spot maybe to put the references, so that would be something that, you know, when you're posting it for your peers, that you might want to put in a separate document for them. Do I have a minimum number of references I'm looking for? So I always tell students that references are about the quality of the references more than the quantity. So if you have a reference that's really, really, really good, like the course textbook, it's probably going to support more than one of your questions. It might mean that you then don't need as many external sources. So I don't have a minimum number. I'm not so quantitative in my approach to grading references. Ramesh, do you want to comment on that?
Exactly what you said. It's not the numbers, it's the quality of references. That's what matters, actually.
Okay, perfect. Ramesh, was there anything in addition that you wanted submitted, or is this list good for you too?
Good.
Good. All right. And Ramesh, before this presentation, and I did agree on the criteria that we were grading you on. So whether you're listening from my class or his, this all applies. I don't think either one of us are going to get too hung up if your thing is not super techy. Exactly. I wanted to see if you guys had any questions about creating a game, about what to submit. You've been pretty good about asking a few as we go along, but I just want to make sure that there are no more questions about gamification. I went kind of fast, so it's kind of an overview. It is due for grading. Hold on. I have to open my calendar. It is due for grading on the 13th. Oh, 14th? I got 13th in my calendar.
And the course outline was 13th.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the 13th. Would I like the Word doc sooner? No. What I have asked for you to do before you hand it in is for you to get some peer feedback on your game. So that's what I'd asked you to do for this Friday, which is not graded. That's like, let's all play each other's games to see if we can help each other make them better before we hand them in for grading. It's always good if I'm not the first one to read your essay or your or play your game.
Somebody wants to be explained again.
To explain that again. Okay. So your game is going to be graded on the 13th. That's the hard deadline. On the 6th, I have asked that you guys share your game with each other in order so that you can do some peer review. I'm not going to be policing that. So like you're talking about if you're a day or two late for peers, is that okay? Well, it might mean that not as many people play your game. I don't really know what the consequences of that are going to be. That would probably be my guess as to what would happen. So the idea is, let's say you create a crossword. Okay, you post your crossword for your peers. Some of your peers play it and they tell you that they had a hard time with a certain thing. Maybe then you can fix it. More importantly, let's say you're doing something like, I don't know. I don't see a lot going wrong with H5P, so maybe like you're doing a Jeopardy game and your links don't work. If your peers play the game before I mark the game, they're going to catch that and you can fix that before you hand it in. Do we post a link in the discussion board? Yes. I have a discussion board specifically for posting games. I don't know what Ramesh was doing. I don't know if I talked to you about this, Ramesh, but I think that you could probably just post it in your regular discussion board.
I don't think I have a separate link set up for that. How did you do it? You just posted a question in the discussion forum, or so that
I create a discussion board and call it student projects usually.
Oh, okay. I don't have one.
Okay. It's up to you if you want to create one, or if they could, it doesn't really matter. They could put it in the regular discussion board as long as they have a clear title that it's a game. Okay, I'm glad that's clear. So in terms of the grade consequence, if you don't post it on Friday, there isn't a grade consequence. But there is a grade consequence if you don't post it on Friday the 13th. I just realized this Friday the 13th. Okay. I don't see any Slido questions. There's really a lot of flexibility in this assignment, and I think that students have enjoyed it in the past. I'm hoping that you guys enjoy it again. And really the reason why we've chosen to do this is because you learn about the modules through creating the game, and then you get to learn about the modules through playing each other's games. So it's like you get to study in a fun way. I think that's awesome. I see a question coming. I don't see any questions in Slido, so I'm just going to put, oh man, this fuzzy view up. Hold on. I will try and get a less fuzzy view up for you guys. I'm sorry the text is small. To clarify, we send to you copy in Word of questions/answers and rationale with supporting references before Friday. No. This Friday, you're posting that for your peers so that they can start studying with it. You submit it to me on Friday the 13th. And if you're going to collect feedback from your peers, you post that with all that other stuff on Friday. So this Friday, you're posting it for your peers so your peers can start playing. Then you get to improve your game to hand in. Also, though, then like if you improve your game, give your peers the improved version of the game as well. It just kind of makes sense. The whole point of this is so that you guys are all learning the content. You're welcome. Okay. I am not seeing questions. So my slides, by the way, are from something called Slides Carnival. They don't have templates for games, but if you're ever doing a presentation, this could be a good place to start with a template. Again, just like the other templates, don't get lost in the template. Pick one, start editing it, and move on. I got a question for you. So we are talking about end-of-life care in the modules this week. A nurse who has a conscientious objection to a client's choice to end their life through medical assistance in dying should explain to the client that they are no longer able to care for them due to a moral conflict, provide regular care for the client until an alternate care provider can be assigned, or advocate that the client be reassessed for mental competence to make a life-ending decision. Didn't really think we were going to get time to go to quiz questions, so I didn't create a whole lot, but let's see what you guys think. Okay, I've got half the people that have answered, and I think that's about how many people are in Slido right now. Let's just see what you say. Oh, you're all correct. So the trick here is that you are allowed to excuse yourself from participating in care that is going to end somebody's life. What you're not allowed to do is tell the patient that you have a moral objection to that. You're supposed to provide whatever care you need to that does not end the person's life until someone can take your place. But it's very important that you don't communicate your objection to the client. And if you're looking for more guidance on that, the College of Nurses of Ontario has a really great document, which I believe we've assigned as a reading in this class, that goes through the criteria for medical assistance in dying and explicitly states that you can't convey your conscientious objection to a client. Okay, I don't really have a lot of time to go into mental health and pain, and it's kind of a heavy topic. What do you think, Ramesh? Think I should keep going? It usually takes me an hour to go through this.
No, that's fine. That's fine. If they have any questions, you answer them, and then you can stop with it. If you want to go over the main points on game creation and the deadlines, that will be good, I think.
Okay, so again, main points with game creation: focus on your content. Make sure that when you submit everything, you submit the Word document with the link to the game, because when we're grading, sometimes it's important to be able to see everything all together. Post it for your peers this Friday. Hand it in for marks Friday the 13th, if you're doing a game. We will try and cover mental health and pain in more depth in another live session. It might end up being either at the end, or I don't know if Ramesh is going to cover some of that. What I will end with tonight is just to remember, I mean, we talked about this at the beginning, that culture is an iceberg. And so a lot of the things are hidden that we sometimes need to assess in order to be culturally competent. One of those things that's hidden is an individual's mental health. And I do think that it's really important that we as nurses pay attention to an individual's mental health, as well as the cultural influences on someone's mental health, because a lot of the values and beliefs that feed into one's perception of what they should be, and then as well their mental health, are shaped by culture. And so that's something that we'll pick up in a future session.
Perfect.
Okay.
Excellent.
I guess that's all I got. I don't want to get into talking too much about mental health with only 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Okay, any questions? I think this is the first time I've ended a live session early. I do see a couple people typing. No, thank you for the clarifications. And I feel much better about this assignment. Thanks for the clarification. I'm glad that this was helpful. And I hope that you're taking away from this content super important. The game doesn't have to be super hard to create. You're very welcome. There are plenty of tools to help you. Just don't get lost in the tool itself. Okay, if you are watching the recording, thank you so much for joining us asynchronously. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out for help. If anybody in either of the classes is going to take the H5P leap and they want to reach out for help, please just email me. I do have some experience, not with all of the elements of H5P, but with some of them, and I could probably help to guide you there. But don't feel like you have to do that. Again, it doesn't have to be super techy. It has to have good content. I hope that everybody enjoys the rest of their day or evening, and just let us know if you need any help.